Well, hi. If you're joining me here today, you'll look behind me, you'll notice that even though we live in a day and age where people will watch endless hours of television, they will be glued to their computer screens, their telephones, their gadgets. And again, I'm not saying any of those things are wrong, but we live in a day and age where the bad boys that are behind me, books, people really don't seem to be as much into books as we were once upon a time. Well, I'm a bit of a book nerd. I love to read. I'm not going to tell you that I'm the greatest reader, but I do like to read. And when my kids were little, they're all grown up now, but when my kids are little, we used to love to have story time. We would pull out books and I would tell my kids whether they were nursery rhymes and little kid stories, but I would also as they got older, I would read my kids The Lord of the Rings. We read through the Harry Potter series, and there were a lot of books that we'd either I would read to them, or when Audible came out, we started to listen to books together. And I find it's a very good pastime. But I do find that reading can be a lost art. So, I ask people, do you read? And it just seems like a lot of people get stalled out on reading. Well, I wrote my own book. It's a book of my spiritual journey years and years ago. And I wrote a book and I've sold several hundred copies of this book. I want to let you know this is not advertising. I don't have any more of these books actually for you to purchase. I'm not wanting to receive money for me to read it, but I am going to read my book. It's called Tale of Two Thieves, Death in a Lonely Field. Uh, I'm just going to read a chapter in each one of my YouTube clips. And if you choose to stay and listen, you're going to hear what my spiritual journey is, and free of charge. Uh, so I will start by reading the back of the book. If you aren't a book nerd, you probably don't know how to read a book, but usually an author, when he gives you, he gives you the front of the book, gives you the title page, back of the book. Now, if it's a book that has a dust jacket on it, it's that paper that's around the book, usually inside, in the front and the back. The author always will give you information that he or she feels is very important for you to know. So I'll read the back of the book and then we'll read chapter 1 and we'll be done for today. Sometimes life gets so dark and shattered, we begin to believe the lie. We begin to think that there is no hope. The Tale of Two Thieves is a true story. It tells the tale of two lives, two young men, two criminals. Both made the tragic mistake of stealing from the wrong man. Both are confronted with the terrifying question, will I die in that lonely field tonight? Even though this is a story that shows that life is broken, dark, and filled with unimaginable terrors, it also points us to where we can find help in the midst of our darkest hours. Our life stories don't have to end as tragedies. There is hope to scatter the darkness. So let's begin in chapter 1. Are you afraid of the dark? No? Well, you should be. We who live in the shadows are very afraid. We are afraid because we know that we're not alone. Other monsters are lurking here also. But mostly, we are afraid of what the darkness has turned us into. Chapter 1. The Lure of Easy Money. As my car raced down the highway, the headlights cut into the darkness that seemed waiting to engulf me. Little did I know they were not only illuminating the road ahead, but they were also revealing the direction in which the next chapter of my life was moving. As it would turn out, I would be entering an even greater darkness than I had ever experienced before. What would you do if someone offered you your favorite candy, yet you suspected that it might have been laced with a deadly poison? Would you still eat it? Remember, it's your favorite candy. How about a poison of a different kind? I've heard it said that we're all just one bad choice away from destroying ourselves. Looking at this saying after years of experience, I can totally see the truth in it. The frightening thing about the bad choices in our lives is that they are not red flagged as such. They don't come to us marked as poison or with warning sirens or flashing red lights. Instead, more often than not, they come dressed to the nines, smelling nice and looking fine. Sure, we might suspect that some of our potentially bad choices might be threes dressed up as nines. But when the crucial moment arrives and it's time to actually make the decision, the temporary pleasure and benefits appear to outshine any of the negative consequences that are lurking in the shadows. That night, as my car moved from the fleeting light into the endless darkness, all I could think about was all the easy money I was about to make. I had accepted and bitten the poison candy. The dollar signs flashing in my head had obscured any common sense I might have normally had, which was relatively little at that time in my life. An associate of mine had offered me a deal, one that would make me thousands of dollars in as little as a half hour. Greed is often louder and more persuasive than common sense. This associate had informed me of a drug house where all of the residents were out of town. He also informed me that there was a large quantity of drugs sitting in this house, just waiting for the right person to come and take them away. As I looked at the opportunity through greed-filled eyes, of course, I understood that person to be me. All I had to do was break into the house, find the drugs, steal them, and make it look like a random break-in. This meant that I could take whatever else I wanted so that the job didn't look like it was planned. My associate knew these dealers, knew that they had the drugs, and knew where they were going to be the night I paid their house a visit. They were going to be at a bodybuilding contest, watching the show. My associate would also be at the contest, which would give him an ironclad alibi. And since the dealers didn't know me, well, I guess that made me the perfect man for the job. The fact that I was competing in the bodybuilding show, that I was extremely fatigued from months of intense dieting and weight training, and that I would have to travel an hour and a half after the contest to execute the plan didn't bother me at all. The dollar signs were far too enticing to be ignored. My future looked bright, at least as far as the headlights and my limited foresight could reveal. And that is the end of chapter 1. I hope I can see you again the next time as we look at chapter 2. Take care.